Hello, and thanks for stopping by. London is packed with plaques. Blue plaques, brown plaques, red plaques, pink plaques, green plaques, oddly shaped plaques, all commemorating people, places and events from the capital's past. There's even one deep underground, inside the new HS2 tunnel beneath Kensal Green Cemetery, dedicated to Isambard Kingdom Brunel. Every now and then though, you may spot a plaque which details something most peculiar, whether it marks a crime, a fictional character, or in some cases, something downright rude. In this video, I'd like to show you some of the capital's most eccentric plaques, and tell you the stories behind them. I'm sure this is only a handful though, so if there are any other bizarre markers out there you can think of, please be sure to note them down in the comments. We'll begin on the northwest corner of Russell Square, where on the junction with Thornhouse Street, you can see this rectangular plaque, which was placed here purely as a means of saying sorry. What's this all about then? Well, the building it's attached to is the Brunei Gallery, part of the School of Oriental and African Studies, which stands on land once owned by the Duke of Bedford and the Russell family. Although this patch was sold to the University of London in 1926, the Russell family retained the right to approve the design of any future buildings on the site. The Brunei Gallery, which was completed in 1997, never formally obtained such permission though, hence the need for this apology, which was requested by the Russell trustees. The triangular plaque below, meanwhile, represents an architectural award, which may well have been placed directly beneath the apology as a wee dig at the Russell's pettiness. Next, we'll look at a classic blue plaque, the best known icon of London's many commemorative schemes. Now run by English Heritage, the very first blue plaque was unveiled by the Society of Arts in the late 1860s at a property on Hollis Street, which connects Oxford Street to Cavendish Square, to mark the birthplace of Lord Byron. Sadly, Byron's old home, along with the pioneering plaque, was demolished in 1889. Absolute sacrilege, don't you think? Meaning the oldest surviving blue plaque is this one, at No. 3 King Street, St James's, honouring Napoleon III, who lived in exile here. Most blue plaques commemorate respected historical figures: Charles Dickens, Amy Johnson, Alan Turing, Tommy Cooper. This one though, on Cato Street in Marylebone, is unusual in that it marks the Cato Street Conspiracy, an extremely violent plot cooked up in 1820, in which a group of revolutionaries planned to murder the Prime Minister, Lord Liverpool, along with his entire cabinet, as they attended a banquet on Grosvenor Square. The gang also planned to decapitate the politicians and parade their heads around London. The bloody scheme was foiled on the evening of the 23rd of February 1820, when the conspirators, who were preparing their weapons for the massacre, were apprehended at this address, then a hayloft above a stable acting as their hideout, following a shootout with the Bow Street runners. Somewhat less violent, but equally quirky, is this green plaque on the junction of Bridge Street and Parliament Square, which is very easy to miss amongst Westminster's collection of world-famous landmarks. This plaque honours John Peake Knight, who, as it notes, invented the world's first traffic light, which was installed at this junction, roughly where the statue of Sir Winston Churchill is now located, in 1868. Standing at 20 foot tall, Knight's early signal used a semaphore during the day and red and green lights at night, and was manually operated by a police constable. Although pioneering, the signal wasn't a success. The design confused drivers of horse-drawn vehicles, and in January 1869, a gas explosion erupted at the signal base, badly injuring the officer on duty. In a similar vein is this plaque, outside the Enfield branch of Barclays Bank, marking the fact that the world's first ever cash machine was unveiled here on the 27th of June 1967. You may be surprised to discover which celebrity was chosen to christen the machine, and therefore be the first ever person to withdraw money in such a way. It was none other than the actor Reg Varney, best known for his role as Stan Butler in the saucy 70s sitcom On the Buses. Sticking with technology, this black plaque at number 304 Holloway Road features a small image of the Telstar communication satellite, which was launched in 1962. The reason for this is that this building was once the home and studio of the genius music producer Joe Meek, whose work on the 1962 record Telstar, performed by the Tornadoes and named in honour of the satellite, earned him the nickname the Telstar Man. Tragically, Joe Meek was a deeply troubled figure who suffered from poor mental health, and on the morning of the 3rd of February 1967, at this very address, he shot his landlady, Violet Shenton, dead, before quickly turning the gun on himself. Another plaque associated with an unlawful killing can be found at 129 Cadogan Terrace in Hackney, which marks the very first railway murder. This crime occurred on the night of the 9th of July 1864, when Franz Muller beat and robbed an elderly city banker named Thomas Briggs on the 9:50 PM train from Fenchurch Street, before callously shoving his body out of the carriage and onto the tracks at a spot close to this site. The particular line on which this occurred no longer exists, although you can still see traces of a railway bridge which once crossed the canal behind Cadogan Terrace. Following the murder, Muller fled to New York, but was pursued and apprehended in Manhattan by Inspector Richard Tanner of Scotland Yard. Hauled back to London, Muller was executed at Newgate Prison, which once stood where the Old Bailey is now located, on the 14th of November 1864. In those days, hangings were still conducted in public, and Muller's Dance with the Noose attracted an estimated 50,000 spectators, many of whom travelled to the event in large crowds on the then newly opened Metropolitan Railway. Strange to think, isn't it, that you could once catch the London Underground to a public execution. Far away from such chaos, in Stanmore, near the end of the Jubilee line, is this rather unusual plaque, a blue disc painted onto a wooden board, which is hidden deep amongst the prickly overgrowth on Brockley Hill. As you can see, once you manage to get close to it, which isn't easy, it marks an ancient landmark, the site of the pottery works of Sulanakai, which are believed to have operated here between around 55 and 160 AD. The work stood alongside Watling Street, one of Roman Britain's most important roads, whose route is now followed by the A5, and Sulanakai was recorded in the Antonine itinerary, essentially the Roman equivalent of an A to Z. Archaeological finds from the period have indeed been unearthed in this area. The wooden plaque can be found on the junction with Wood Lane, opposite the Royal Orthopaedic Hospital, and is arguably one of the most inaccessible and hardest to find within the entire Greater London area. From Roman Britain to Restoration Vice, this small plaque can be seen tucked up on the corner of Whitecross Street and Old Street. Installed by a group calling themselves the English Hedonists, this one marks the former home of Priss Fotheringham, who, as the plaque cheekily claims, was considered to be the second best whore in the city. Some title, eh? And I wonder who was number one. In the mid-17th century, Priss, whose real name was Priscilla Careswell, was quite the local character, and she was mentioned in a number of publications, such as 1660's The Wandering Whore, essentially a directory of the city's sex workers, or as the booklet puts it, a list of all the crafty boards and their diabolical practices at the Chuck Office. Chuck Office being 17th century slang for a brothel. Priss went on to run her own brothel and was very successful by all accounts. Although ravaged by smallpox, syphilis and mercury poisoning, she died in 1668. Far more wholesome is this plaque, laid as a paving slab on Festing Road in Putney. Although it's grown rather faded since being placed here in 2009, it marks the fact that number 54 Festing Road was once home to the children's author David Meek, whose most famous creation was Mr. Benn, the bowler-hatted gentleman who, via a magical fancy dress shop, would embark upon all manner of exciting adventures. In the books and subsequent animated series, which was first broadcast in 1971, Mr. Benn lived on Festive Road, which looks pretty much identical to Festing Road. On a similar note is this tiny unofficial plaque, easily London's smallest plaque, on the corner of Baker Street and Malcolm Street, which marks the fictional HQ of Dangermouse, the greatest secret agent in the world. Sadly, it's looking rather tattered nowadays, so maybe it's time it was tidied up and made official. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this look at some of London's most curious plaques, and as always, I'd love to hear your own thoughts. Have you noticed any of the plaques seen here yourself? And what other strange examples can you think of? Please be sure to let me know in the comments. If you haven't yet subscribed to Robslondon, then I'd appreciate it very much if you could please consider doing so, as this, along with clicking the bell icon to receive notifications, will ensure you don't miss out whenever I publish a new video. Plus, of course, it would be wonderful to have you along. Clicking the hype button is a huge help too. And if you want to stay updated between videos, please check out the community tab. If you're feeling extra generous, you can also support my work with a tip, using either the YouTube thanks button, which can be found beneath the video, or via my Ko-fi account, which I'll link in the description. Any such donations are of course greatly appreciated, and they really do help go towards creating content. Anyway, on that note, thanks again for watching friends. Stay well and please be sure to stay tuned.